This is going to change your mind about everything you currently know about building a house, and you're never going to look at building a house the same. So listen, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, because you're going to want to take notes. And this is going to profit for you immensely. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. My name's Jerry Pinkas, and for the last 35 years, I have bought, built, flipped just about everything when it comes to real estate. And what I'm going to share with you, as I do with everybody here on this channel, is to avoid those pitfalls that are costly. You're going to learn everything right here, right now on this channel. So give me a thumbs up if you're good with that. Now here's the 5 key things. Number 1 is core data. Now the cost to build a home in 2025 comes down to one key metric, and that's the cost per square foot. And this is the amount of labor and materials for every square foot of your home. And that's why it's the single most important factor when establishing your home's cost. So you want to look at the National Association of Home Builders, that's the NAHB, and they did a survey. They asked 41 builders all across the country, what's the average cost to build? And it came out to be $140 per square foot. And another source is Craftsman Books, which is the 2025 construction estimator, said it was $139 a square foot. Now, the fact is that the two different places came up with almost the same number. That means it's probably a solid estimate for 2025. But before you start multiplying this number by your home, you have to realize a lot of things. That $140 per square foot is primarily for homes between 1,600 and 2,800 square feet. So this means that these are fixed costs. Now, just for example, check this out. Getting water and sewer lines to your property, it's going to cost the same. So whether you build a small 1,000 square foot house or a 3,000 square foot house, it's going to be the same. So the bigger homes, that cost gets spread out, right? So the cost per square foot actually goes down. And in smaller homes, they take up a bigger share of that budget, which drives the cost per square foot higher. So just realize that before you start multiplying that number, there are fixed costs to building. So if you're planning on building a home that's 1,600 to 2,800 square feet, that $140 figure is a solid starting point. And this covers labor and materials for the foundation, the excavating, all the way through to the final coat of paint. And knowing this basic number is going to be super important, because every cost that you make, every choice that you make, no matter how big your home is, what the materials you use, is going to push your final price either up or down from this point. Now let's take a look at number 2 and what's not included and why. Now there's more than just labor and materials when building a house, so that $140 estimate does not include everything. There's several major costs that are going to add to your total budget, and these costs are going to vary much from one location to another, so it wouldn't make sense to include them in this national average. Now first, you have to consider the land costs. Now the price of a lot can range anywhere from a few $1,000s in rural areas to millions of dollars in high-end urban and coastal markets. For example, we have lots here in our area that are like $79,000 all the way up to $900,000. Even within the same city. So you can see that prices can vary by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And land just isn't about the price that you pay. It also changes with how much your costs are to build that house. So if your land has problems underground, like rocks, or it needs to be leveled, or it's bad soil, or you're building there where it's a hurricane or an earthquake, you're going to need extra engineering to make it a stronger building. Now this can make your total cost much higher. For instance, sinkhole areas or hurricane-prone areas like Florida, or earthquake-prone areas like California, you're going to pay for more stronger foundations, windows that can handle that impact, and other things that make your house safer. And next, you're going to need to think about permits and impact fees. Now, these are the fees that your local government charges you to approve the building and connection things like water and electric. So you're probably going to need to set aside about $3,000 or $10,000 or more, depending upon where you actually live. And these costs can widely vary from one municipality to the other. So to get an accurate number, you want to check with your local building and engineering department so they can tell you exactly what these permits are going to cost and what you're going to need and what your bottom line is going to be. Now, finally, architectural design fees. These are great if you're using a stock house plan, but it might cost you somewhere like around $1,500 or more. But to get an actual architect to design a custom home, it's going to cost you like $10,000 or $20,000. And in some cities, you need an official architect that actually stamps these plans. So if you're thinking about getting a ready-made plan, just make sure it meets your local building regulations. And number 3 is builder overhead and profit. Now, one of the biggest factors that can inflate your home building budget is the cost of hiring a professional builder. So when they say a professional builder, I'm talking about a licensed contractor, a general contractor, because in most states, home builders must be licensed to actually operate. Now, when you hire this home builder, you're not just paying for labor and materials. You're also covering the overhead and profit, which typically adds around 20 or 30% to the total cost. So remember that most general contractors, they don't actually do physical labor themselves. They just hire subcontractors like the electricians and the plumbers and the framers that handle this work. And their role in the project is management. So they're making sure that everything stays on schedule and within budget. But when we look at the numbers, large home builders typically report gross margins between 23 and 30%, which means they mark up total construction by the cost of around 30%. So just keep this in simple terms. If raw labor and raw materials to build your home costs $400,000, a builder's final price might be closer to $520,000. Now, one thing that you really want to know is all general contractors are not equal. And I've seen some absolute gems that will help you cut costs and give you super high quality products. But on the other hand, I've also seen some train wrecks, some disasters, and all kinds of other stuff. So the general contractor that you actually want to run away from is the one that's a disaster, a train wreck, or how do you even find this out? So it's something you just can't even Google to find out, know if the builder is good just because he has 4.8 stars on Google, yet is not paying his vendors, not paying his creditors, and not paying several local banks. I know one of those. Matter of fact, I know a couple of them. And that's one of the many reasons that you don't want to pick that one. This is the reason why you want to deal with the local real estate experts so they can hook you up with the right person the first time without the costly pitfalls. So number 4, how do you use this data? So you have that $140 per square foot and you understand all these other factors. Now let's talk about how to use this data to actually create a realistic budget for your home build. Now, if you're serious about building a home, you're going to need a step-by-step approach to calculate your actual costs. So step 1, calculate your base cost. And start with the size of your home, multiply that by the 140 to get your baseline construction cost. And then, for example, if you're building a 2,000 square foot home, that base cost for labor and materials will be about $280,000. And this is your starting point. Now keep in mind, this is for a basic home in the 16 to 2,800 square foot range. But if you're planning a high-end build or even a smaller home, the fixed costs, your numbers are going to be different. Step 2 is you add those land costs. Now, research the price of land in your desired area and use your local real estate expert to find those hidden gems and the real estate listings that are not for sale that you don't see on the market, right? As I mentioned, some land prices can vary dramatically even within that same town, so take your time to find the right lot at the right price. Step 3 is factor in permits and fees and then contact your local building department to get an estimate on permits, impact fees, utility connection costs. All this stuff varies. Now, the range can be a couple $100 to a couple thousand depending upon your location. And number 4, include the design costs. So if you're using a stock plan, budget around $1,500 to $3,000. But for a custom design, expect to pay $10,000 to $20,000 or even more, depending upon the complexity of your project. And number 5 is the builder's cost. So if you're hiring a professional builder, you're going to expect to pay 20 to 30% on top of your base construction cost. Now this is the markup for their overhead, the project management, and their profit. Because nobody works for free, right? For example, if you use your base cost of $280,000, hiring a builder that could bring the total closer to like $336 or $364, somewhere in that range. And number 6 is a contingency fund. Construction projects rarely go exactly as planned. So material prices, they fluctuate, unexpected site issues arise, labor shortages, all this stuff can make delays. So a smart move is to set aside a contingency fund of around 10 to 20% of your total budget to cover unexpected costs. So on a $400,000 project, that means you should have an extra $40,000 to $80,000 ready. And number 5 is critical warnings and final steps. So before you dive into your building project, there's a few key warnings and tips that you're going to want to keep in mind. These are going to help you avoid those costly mistakes and make sure that your project really does stay on track. Now, one of the biggest budgeting mistakes that people make is underestimating those fixed costs. Because in smaller homes, they often have a higher cost per square foot as a fixed cost that are spread out over fewer square feet. Hope that makes sense. So if you're building on a smaller side, some people think, oh, the small is cheap. It doesn't always mean that, because don't be surprised if your cost per square foot gets closer to 160 or 170 instead of that 140 average. And never accept your first bid that you receive. Doesn't matter if it's materials, labor, or subcontractors. A good rule of thumb is get 3 bids per trade, such as plumbing, electrical, framing, all that stuff. So this not only helps to avoid overpaying, but also gives you a better sense of the actual market rates in your area. And you want to make sure you check credentials. Don't just read the reviews. Check with the locals who actually know and used this vendor before, because the good is seldom cheap and the cheap is seldom good. And finally, plan for those delays, weather delays, it happens. Material shortages, I can't get this part, whatever it is, permit holdups. This stuff and so much more can actually push your timeline back. And so a safe estimate is always to add another 10 to 20% onto your timeline down the road so you can expect delays and don't completely throw off your plans. Did you find any of this information helpful? Are you building a house or thinking about it? Where are you planning to build? And have you ever had a bad experience with one of these? Go ahead and put it in the comments and let others know on this channel. Let me know what's going on with you. I'm Jerry with Jerry Pinkas Real Estate Experts here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and my real estate team is here to help you find your hidden gem and to avoid those pitfalls that are costly. So give us a call at 843-839-9870. My team's goal is to show you all of your very best options, not just a handful, because you don't want average, you want way above average when it's your time. So if you subscribed, I'll see you in the next video. And I just want to say I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch and comment here on this channel. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys.